Welcome back to FURYCAST. But first, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and of course, smash the bell for notifications. And don't forget to sign up to the mailing list for my new graphic novel, illustrated by the world-famous Ebi Canales. Sign up now. The link is in the description. Today's show, we go international, all the way from the continent of Australia. Australia's a continent, right? Right. All the way from the country of Australia. He's the writer and artist of the comic The LUCENT. Today on the show, I have Mr. Michael Bancroft. Tell me a little bit about yourself. How'd you grow up, man, and what eventually led you into comic books?
I've never been to the States, but I imagine it's I mean, we're our own country, we have our own culture and everything, but I imagine it's not too dissimilar from growing up in a lot of American cities. You know, we consume the same media, same movies, music, and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, in the early 90s, when comics had a big boom, they had a big boom here as well. And, you know, so I just had a pretty normal suburban upbringing. And when my friends started getting into comics, I got into comics as well. And that was back when you used to be able to go get them off the newsstand. So I just rode my bike up to the what we have news agencies here, and just picked what I thought was the coolest looking comic, which was a Spider-Man comic. And I was in love from that very moment, and started collecting pretty much from then on. I did give up eventually, but I came back into it many years later. You know, I started drawing Ninja Turtles and stuff when I was a kid, because the Ninja Turtles were all the rage. And but I didn't really start properly considering drawing until I got into Spider-Man comics. And that was, I started with, you get out the baking paper and start tracing over what you've got, and then you attempt to draw your own. You kind of look at what they've done and try and draw it like that, and then eventually you try and draw your own characters. When I first started drawing, all my characters for myself just had the exact same pose, the front on, arms down, like everything symmetrical. And I was just kind of trying to bite Jim Lee's hatching style, because that was all the rage at the time. Because there's no way I was going to try and bite Todd McFarlane style. That was too advanced. But I could pretty well replicate a Jim Lee, but as long as he was standing in one position and I didn't have to draw any hands or feet, that was it. Man, I was fine from there. I was doing that at about between the ages of 11 and I'd say probably 15. At some point during when I was reading Spider-Man, I found Spawn on the newsstand, and I was like, what is this? I had to have it. I ran back home to my house and begged my mum for the money to I get it. And I was so worried. I was so worried someone else was going to buy it, because there was one issue on the thing. I ran back home. I ran back to the newsagent and grabbed it.
So what happened to get you out of comics? So at what age did you get out of comics?
I think they started losing favor with me, and it was mostly about what Marvel was doing with the stories. I didn't like the direction of the stories. I didn't like the endless crossovers and stuff like that, forcing me to buy comics that I didn't want to buy. And I think they also jumped up in price so I could get less. So yeah, I just kind of, I fell out of it. I got into other things, interested in other things, but I always still love them. It's not like I lost interest in comics. I just couldn't afford and didn't quite like what they were doing with Spider-Man at the time. I was only really ever interested in Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, and Spawn. So it wasn't as if I could just find another title I could go to. The other things just didn't really interest me that much. But I would always still want to collect them. So whenever I got a little bit of money together, I would go into a comic book store and see if there was something I could find. But by then it was mostly, I just wanted the back issues, because while I was collecting new issues, I wanted to see the past issues. So I went back and I collected the whole run of Web of Spider-Man. I got most of the run of the Peter Parkers. And the old Amazing were a bit expensive for me, but I did end up grabbing quite a few. And yeah, I loved them. I devoured them. There was something about the late 70s and the 80s, pretty much, that I just loved that era. So even though I wasn't buying new stuff, I never really stopped collecting here and there, but it was very sporadic. And it just meant I never really sort of left comics. It just wasn't the major part of my life. And that was how it was until, yeah, pretty much from the late 90s all the way up until, let's say 2017 ish. And that's when I started watching YouTube videos on comics again. All the controversy with Comicsgate and everything came about. And I just was like, oh yeah, like I want to get back into this. I've got a little bit of money to spend. Let's see what it's all about. And I'm actually skipping over a lot of stuff here because in 2010 I started writing my own story. It wasn't actually a comic then, but I just had a story that I wanted to sort of flesh out. So I just started writing, and that's kind of went along for a long time, maybe about 5 or so years. And I was in France in 2015, and I came across these things. I've actually got them pulled out, which are French. Well, that's actually a Matthew Fowler book, but French bande dessinée album books. These big hardcover albums, which is all the rage over in France, and I'd never seen these before. There's Valerian and all these comics. I'd never seen these before, and I was just blown away by them. What was inside them, the artwork, the big grand stories and everything like that. And that's when I realized, what, I can draw ish. I think I'm pretty okay with a pencil and a pen. Maybe I could turn this story that isn't really going anywhere, that I've been writing for 5 years, into a graphic novel. And that's what happened in 2015. And that's what I've been doing ever since. So when I found these French comics, and the idea struck me to, hey, maybe your story isn't like going to be a novel or a screenplay or whatever it would be. Maybe it should be a comic. It didn't seem like too crazy of an idea for me to, can I learn how to draw comics and like properly, not just a man standing straight with no hands? Can I actually learn this skill and turn my story into a graphic novel? And I thought, yeah, sure, I can do that, which was, a pretty crazy thing to think. Whenever I had a moment to daydream, you're on a train or whatever, I would just sort of think, what kind of story would I tell if were I to tell a story? And over many, many years, I had a premise that came about. And it came about because I was always always had crazy lucid dreams my whole life. So dreams where I knew I was dreaming. And I noticed over the years since a kid that the things I was doing in the dreams, it was kind of like being a superhero. And I was over the years, getting better at it. Like I was practicing, I was getting better at doing the weird, crazy things I was doing in my dreams. So that was always there. And I was wondering, can I make a story out of this? Can I turn this into something? In the early 2000s, it came to a fever pitch because I was a university student on really weird hours. I was staying up late, getting up late. And that's actually, found out to be conducive to having even crazier and crazier dreams. And that's what happened. And then The Matrix came out, and I was like, that's sort of a bit like what I was thinking. And it really got my my mind thinking, how can I tell a story, not the same story, but a story a bit like that deals with the similar themes, has a kind of a similar premise, And yeah, from then it was just always I was just carried everywhere I go. It's just sort of sitting there in your brain somewhere. But it was about 2010 where I finally decided, what, if I'm gonna do this, I need to do this, because I think by then I was looking at 30, and I'm thinking, if I'm ever gonna do something, I need to actually sit down and start writing. And that was like 5 years of writing, just god awful, terrible writing, not really knowing how to do it. But it was invaluable because I wrote hundreds of thousands of words that were all, unreadable garbage, but it was like practice. It was getting what was inside down into something tangible and real. And I felt like, again, you be green, come in naive. I just thought, I'll just start writing chapters like that, and just, hey, here we go. I mean, I'd done a little bit of creative writing in high school, but whatever. It was, and I would read it back. Wow, this is really garbage. This is unreadable. So I did. I started buying all kinds. I mean, they're all my shelf here. I've got a bookshelf here. It's just like, conflict, action, and suspense, beginning, middles, and ends, the writer's journey, the hero's journey, all these books. I read through all of them, devoured them. And at that point as well, the internet had, was sort of like blowing up as a thing where people were putting things on the internet. Internet 2.0. So there was forums and all these sort of things, and I just jumped right into that, and was spending a large amount of my time learning the craft. That was like a 5-year process before I felt comfortable with, I've got something actually that I can use in a story.
How has your opinion of the craft of writing changed from before you were a writer to now?
Well, yeah, you just think, you can, you think anyone can do it. Yeah, it changes everything. It changes the way you view all stories. Once you learn these things, you can't unlearn them. So everything you view now is through that lens. And my wife gets sick of hearing it when I say to her, I see what they're doing there. They're setting that up. Or when when a movie fails at it, or a TV show fails at it, I'm like, hang on, they had that character pull out a gun. Like, we've got to see him use that gun at some point, and they didn't use it. And that sort of stuff. And so you get to learn the sort of the tools of the trade and the techniques and the time tested traditions and everything. So you can't really consume anything without that moving forward. So it really does alter pretty much everything going forward once you've devoured all this stuff. By the time I was ready to start on the art, like turn it into a comic, there actually was YouTube. That was the thing. I could go onto YouTube, and there was a guy called Proco, and he was doing like tutorials on how to draw a head from any angle and that sort of stuff. It's like, well, I need that. How to draw hands, how to draw all this sort of stuff. So I was devouring all that stuff. But I've always been, I've had that innate talent. I can sort of see something and go, okay, I want it to look kind of like that. Let's just try that, and we'll see how I go. And thankfully, it's worked out okay. But like I said, it's been an ongoing struggle for 7 years now. And I feel like every day I can learn something new. And then I look at the guys who've been doing it for decades, and I still can't understand exactly how they manage to pull off what they pull off. It really is a skill that takes a lifetime to master.
What's the big lesson you've learned in art?
Don't have an ego about your art. Like, don't be precious about it. Especially with comics, on any panel, on any page, you're not painting the Sistine Chapel here. You're doing a drawing. Get it out there, make it as good as you possibly can, and then move on to the next panel, because it's like the art serves the story. That's the point of it for me. I never wanted to. I'm not trying to be, the next Jim Lee, the next Todd McFarlane, the next Kenneth Roquefort, or anything like that. I'm just trying to tell my story, and the art serves that. And yeah, man, there's so many lessons. Just try whatever you can. And try and draw every day, even if you only get half an hour in because your real life is, you got day job and kids and family and all that sort of stuff. Because if you start slacking and you lose that habit of daily drawing, that's when you can really get yourself into a rut, because you can't just quit. You can't just quit drawing for 3 months and then jump right back into a 10-hour drawing day. It's not going to work. That it takes a habit to build up that sort of stamina to sit down at a table and draw for that long. And if you're going to be drawing comics, you really need to be doing that.
What's your workflow?
When I started, I came into it, I didn't know anyone. I was doing everything, absolutely everything in the comic. When it came time to sort of crowdfund it and get serious with it, so my initial crowdfund just it went way bigger than I ever imagined it could. It went off, and I would have been happy with 100 backers, and I was sitting there with, I don't know, 500, 600, and I was like, wow, people are really gonna. And then people were telling me, I'm really anticipating your book. This is my most highly anticipated book. I can't wait to get it. I'm having anxiety. I'm like, oh, this is my first comic. I did thankfully find a friend through YouTube who is an editor. And I showed him the book, and he said, yeah, you've got something here, but we need to work on this. And that was the moment when it really became an actual decent product, I think, is what working with Joe Fulton, my editor. He helped mold what was a pretty sort of rough, good start into something that I think has real legs going forward. So yeah, it's primarily Joe and I working on the book, and I'm just like it. I'm happy to do the art and the coloring and everything like that. It is incredibly time consuming for one person to manage, but without Joe as the editor, especially on the kind of story that I'm trying to write, which is kind of like a bit more, it's sort of like in the mystery box style, where you're dropping a lot of clues along the way in in anticipation of the big payoff at the climax. Absolutely. I mean, I was crazy to think I could tell this story without a second pair of eyes on it to kind of keep everything on track, keep it focused. And as the creator of it, I'm way too close to it to be able to see it as someone has no idea what it's about, sees it for the first time. So that's like, yeah, he's been an absolute godsend on that front.
So now tell me about how you came across the infamous Comicsgate and what your experience has been like.
So when I started making the comic, I was all in. We're okay, we're doing it. I'm making it. I really had no idea what to do with it. I didn't really think I could produce a printed comic. I didn't know any. I'm in Australia, we don't have many conventions and stuff like that. There's no scene here. There's no that I was really aware of at the time. I've since learned that there is a tiny scene, but we're talking really tiny. So I thought, well, I'm going to be part of the future. Webtoons, that's a thing. So I started uploading it in episodes as a webtoon. That was actually a really good experience, because people got a sense of the story, and I got some feedback, and whether people liked it and that sort of stuff. But I was in that scene for a couple of years. I realized it really wasn't for me. It's very far left progressive. They get into all the identity politics. Everyone's trying to sell themselves on what they are, not what they're making, and all that sort of stuff. Wasn't for me at all. But I didn't know that there was any other option for me. So I was, on YouTube watching different things, and I came across these people who were talking about comic books. And I was like, oh, making a comic. Let's, I've been into comics for years and years. Let's see what it's all about. And it was Richard C. Meyer, and he was talking about how these America Chavez comics were completely hilarious. And I started watching them because I just thought they were the funniest things ever.
Him or the books?
Well, he was funny, and the books were funny as well. And I, what I liked about the videos that he made back in 2017 is he would actually tell you what the good ones were. And I thought, well, that's actually cool. I want to get into back into reading comics. So I was like, I started buying Marvel and DC books again for the first time in how long had it been? It was 2017. It would have been a long time by then. So, I was buying some Punisher. I was buying my very first Batman books. I'd never bought a Batman book before. It was great. And then it all started to really, like, the whole culture war side of it really started to bubble up. It got very weird. It got really aggressive and hyper. And that all kind of culminated in, him making a Jawbreakers comic that took off. And, I just, this sort of, for want of a better word, a community just sort of emerged out of that. And I was like, all these people, finally, I'm amongst people that I agree with who were actually into comic books. So I was like, I'm at that point, I was like, I am all in. Let's do this. And, I had my webtoon, I had my comic, and I saw people were jumping on and starting to crowdfund their own things. And I thought, I could do that now. I don't think I'm ready. I think I still have to work on some things, get it better, get it to a point where I, want to actually present it to these people. So yeah, I was just hanging out in the chats on YouTube. I opened up a Twitter account. I just started getting involved, and yeah, that was like 2017, and I was all in by around 2018 or so.
I think Richard C. Myers, like the Comicsgate gateway drug. Everybody I interview,
Yeah.
everybody I interview, it's like, yeah, start listening to your boy Zach's videos. Shout out.
It's funny. I hadn't listened to his videos in a long while recently, but I've started getting back into them again. I kind of go in waves, because I sort of, when the whole YouTube thing really started taking off, Ethan Van Sciver's channel got really big. A lot of other people started making channels. I really got into that, and Zach was never really into that sort of stuff. He was just doing his own thing by himself. It was for a little while, but yeah, I got really into that. So it's funny, like, Zach brought me here, but I ended up going in a hanging out with a kind of slightly different crowd in the end. So, but overall, I mean, it's been fantastic. I kind of hang out in CG. That's how I view it. I view CG as like a place. It's a place to go on the internet where you can hang out among people who generally agree with sort of what you're about. And to me, that means they're not just, no one's obsessed with what the color of your skin is or what your sexuality is or any of that sort of stuff. It's just like, do you like comics? Yeah, cool. All right, well, let's hang out and look at some comics, cool comics or whatever. And I have fun in that space every day. I'm on Twitter, I have fun. I've got my YouTube channel. I have amazing fun both hanging out in chats on other channels and on my own channel. Yeah, it's been a blast. I've been loving it. It's like it's going on 5 years now, and couldn't be happier. It's been one of the best 5 years of my life, actually. I've been struggling to kind of find something creative that I can do that actually I feel like has a future. And I've been doing that since the late 90s, here and there, and everything would it would go well for a little bit, and then I'd realize it, because there's no real future in this. I've got to move on to something new. And for the first time since then, I finally feel like I'm somewhere where I can actually build something real, something that I can make money off, something where I can do something creative that is valuable, and all of that together, because I've made money elsewhere, but it didn't fulfill that. When you have that creative urge, you just can't ignore it. So I feel like it's like the culmination of a whole bunch of stuff all in one place. So yeah, I love it.
This creative thing, man, will gnaw at you, and like you said, it doesn't always lead you to a path of riches. Mostly, it doesn't. I mean, you start a band, how many bands make it? But
Yeah.
speaking of making it, let's talk about the books you've made so far. So the one you said was your first book that kind of blew up, 500 backers. Was that Waking Dream?
Yeah. So that's why I took a long time to actually launch my book, because I'd originally formatted it in a format that wasn't good for crowdfunding a more Western style comic. And it spent a long time just actually formatting it for Webtoon. So I had to sort of rework it all into a an American comic book size book, and that took me a long time to do. And so it's the only book I've put out so far. It's an ongoing series. The Lucent, my story, it's the only story I really want to tell. I've been building this thing up for well over a decade now, and I have, there's so many ways I can take it. I've got so much planned for it. That's really all I'm focused on doing. So I put out Waking Dream. I ended up actually selling over 1,000 copies of that in the end, over a long period of time. But as a first time out, I mean, I couldn't ask for more. Like, that is, how can you not just be absolutely thrilled with that? So the next book is called Painted Death. It follows up on from Waking Dream, the first one. I've also got another book in the works, which is a smaller one shot called Fractured Mind, which I'm getting another artist to help me on. And yeah, it's all just moving ahead, full steam ahead. I'm planning on launching Painted Death in 2023, and I will be learning from the mistakes I made on Waking Dream, which is I will be getting the overwhelming vast majority of the work done before I go live. Us guys with day jobs, we don't always get to just, hey, I'm going to spend 10 hours, working on my book today. I don't have that kind of time, unfortunately. So I've got to like plan ahead a little bit.
Is this all these books? They're in the same universe, so they're all connected.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So the Lucent kind of universe, it's a big, grand, epic story. I kind of say it's a bit like with Star Wars. Star Wars, they've expanded it out into this big universe where it goes all different directions. But the original movies were about Luke Skywalker and his heroic journey and that sort of stuff. So that's how I've sort of done it. There's this big universe of the Lucent out there. I can't really put all that into a single comic series. So what I've done is I've focused in on a very important character called Ella Forsyth, and the series that I'm putting out follows, her character arc from, coming into the world and that hero's journey. And that it'll conclude with her in that. But in the meantime, in other ways, I can tell other stories that are connected to that story. But everything that I do is going to be connected to the main Lucent world.
And what's the pitch for your original story? What's the plot?
The general premise is you imagine, and this was that, remember I said I had that premise going all the way back when I was kind of percolating, which was, I was having these dreams and I was learning to do things in these dreams. Well, imagine that was actually, you could bring that into the real world, these things that you're doing in your dreams. What if that was something that was real? And a certain group of the population had learned that. And I'm also really big on kind of alternate history, secret society, conspiracy, Illuminati kind of stuff. So I wanted to have that in my story. That was like, had to be in there. And I think I like intertwining history into the stories. So I thought of, well, that's a great premise, because you can say, all right, well, what if that's always been the case? And that a group of people have kind of taken control of this ability, and they guard it, they police it, they're in control of it. And that's kind of the basic story. So imagine that's our world, our civilization, humanity, going back thousands and thousands of years. What world would that create? What situation would that create? That's where the main character, born today, she's the main character. Ella is, we see her in, she's a 20-year-old woman in London, and she is the Waking Dream. The story is her becoming aware of this. She's one of those people, she has these dreams where she's doing these crazy things, but to her it's just a dream. And then in Waking Dream, events take place where she very violently finds out that this is actually, there's something going on in the real world and everything. This is vast conspiracy surrounding her. And that's the kind of, it's kind of long-winded, but that is the basic premise of the story.
So can people still pick it up somewhere, Are you
Yeah, there's
on demand?
very few copies left. I have a website called cgnow.net where I host a bunch of other Comicsgate books, and they're links to where you can buy them right now on the internet. They're all available right now. It's not like crowdfunding. You can go there and pick and get it sent out to you. I've actually only got, I think it's about 18 copies left of the first printing. That's all that's left out of 1,000 or so books that I printed. I will be doing a reprint when I put up the new campaign of the first book, so I'll be able to get the second book and obviously the first book again, but it'll be a new cover and it'll be the second printing and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it is available. But it's kind of like a getting quick situation at the moment.
Get them while you can. 18 left,
Yeah.
everybody. Now, I did want to ask you about your online presence, CG Now being one of them. Was that your brainchild? So basically, go ahead and describe what CG Now is.
Well, one of the things we do on my channel is we talk a lot about crowdfunding. That's really what I'm interested in. I love the crowdfunding scene, independent comics, Comicsgate, all of that stuff. And we sort of just brainstorm and we trying to figure out how can we make this better, because there's a lot of roadblocks. There's a lot of issues with the way that we're doing that we want to make work better. One of them is shipping. It's quite expensive to ship these things around the world, distribution, all that sort of stuff. How do you get eyeballs on campaigns if you're not a known entity, if you're just a newcomer, all that sort of stuff. So, we're doing this for years now. We've been doing this for over 2 years, just, chatting about how do we make this better? What can we do? And when you do this, you just sort of notice where there are things that are lacking. And one of the things that was pointed out for a long time was there's no place where people can go who, oh, I've seen these guys on YouTube. I've seen their books shared around on social media. Where can I go and buy something? Oh, well, go to this guy's website. Go to that guy's website. Yeah, it's very difficult to get into, especially if you've never bought a crowdfunded book before. And then we would see a lot of people who were coming into it saying, I want to support all these guys. And they would back books, but they wouldn't get them for 6 months to a year, sometimes even longer. So like, I feel like I've been in this thing for a long time, but I haven't even got a comic book yet. So it all sort of came about from that. It's like, well, let's create a site where, and it can be super easy. It's just more of a directory of in one place where you can go to get people's books that you can buy right now, and they'll ship it out, next day or whatever. And it's been, look, it's been pretty successful. I've seen a lot of people have said they've sold out of their books because they've been getting a whole bunch of sales from it. So yeah, it's been going very well. We also actually implemented another thing on it called the CG Now calendar, which is a place where you can go see in one place when all these campaigns will be launching. It's helpful both for fans to sort of plan out what they're going to back, because there's a lot of, you can't back everything. No one can back everything. What are they going to back? And also for creators as a resource to see, I want to find a slot in a week or a month where I can kind of launch my book and not be surrounded by 10 other people launching at the exact same time.
Yeah, well, that actually helps me out a lot. I'm currently working on a project with E-Bike Analysis, the artist run iron sights and all that. And my project's called the Gentleman's Guild, and it does does deal with secret societies and things like that. But it's just out there and with secret societies and kung fu and a lot of action, a lot of fun. But one of my concerns is I don't want to launch the same day Ethan Van Sciver launches. You know what I mean? So you're saying that's a tool I could use. Someone like myself, I have crowdfunded before, and I do have a mailing list, but all of it is from my film work and people that are used to my film work and supported that and supported the crowdfunding. That's how I funded my film. What's your advice for me, first time crowdfunding a comic?
Well, so I think the best thing you can do, well, what you're doing here, like having a channel, is a great start. That's a way to sort of get yourself out there and get yourself known and promote and everything. But I think the number one thing, and I don't know if it's necessarily easy, it's not easy for everyone because it is time consuming, is to kind of just hang out with the crowd of backers, find out where they are and just hang out with them online a little bit. And, you know, don't come in there like a salesman saying, hey, I've got a book. Do you want to buy it? Just like hang out, make friends, get to know people. That's usually my number one piece of advice for a newcomer to comics. If you're an established pro who's worked 30 years in the industry and you want to come over, it's a different story. But if you're putting out your very first comic, the best thing you can do is just come into some YouTube chats, get onto Twitter, and just start saying hi to people, interacting with their posts, getting to know people, because it's that group of people from which you're going to be able to launch later on. They're sort of who will hold you up in the community, because there is a community of people who back independent crowdfunded comics. That is the thing. Some people don't like that word community, and I understand why, because there's a whole sort of baggage that goes with it. But there are certain people who do that. I found the Comicsgate community have been the best, most supportive in that field that I've ever seen. And it's a community of backers and creators as well. So there's like, you can get a lot of help from other creators and you can get a lot of feedback from fans. But I think that, yeah, like I said, the best thing that you can start is just getting out there and having people know who you are first, because people will come to me to say, hey, can I promote my book on your show? And I mean, unless the book is absolutely mind-blowingly awesome, most of the time I'm not going to say yes, because I'm like, well, I don't know you. My audience doesn't know you. There's other people who want to get on the show that they do know. You know, I'm probably going to put them on first. So, and it's the same across the board with a lot of people who, you know, promote comics on their channels and stuff like that. So yeah, that'd be my number one piece of advice.
Yeah, it's like you know, because I've done a movie and you know, I've done film festivals and all that, especially with Twitter. I'll just get a message on Twitter, and it's another filmmaker who just went live with their crowdfunding, and I don't know them from Adam. They didn't support mine. They don't comment on posts. They never stopped off and said hi, but they want me to go to their Kickstarter and give them money. You know, and it's like, this is our first introduction and you're asking me for money. It wasn't when my film was live or when my film came out, you said, hey man, I watched your movie. That'd be a great thing. I actually watched your movie. Good job. Let's stay connected. Yeah. And then, you know, we build a relationship. They don't do that. Filmmakers just hit you up for money.
Yeah, it's crazy. You know, it takes time to build relationships with people. And that's what I think Comicsgate has done better than anyone, is building actual relationships, friendships, even with fans, with backers directly. I know so many people in my audience, when I say by name, I mean at least the name that they put on their Twitter handle or in their YouTube account. You know, I know them. I see them almost every day. We hang out, we chat, we joke around. We share the similar interests, so we can talk about, oh, what show are you watching? What comic book are you reading? What do you think of this? Like, we can do that whenever we want, every day. And then when it comes time to, as a creator, promote your story, they are that much more likely to say, yeah, I mean, out of all the things I could possibly support, all the campaigns I could possibly support, I think I'm going to support this guy, because, you know, we know each other now. We're friendly with each other. We've built that rapport together. And I think, yeah, CG has done that the best. And the people who aren't able to manage that, you notice that, then, you know, they don't have that sort of presence online. And
so let me ask you now, your opinion, or your advice rather, regarding crowdfunding. And it's kind of like talking about my book again. I'm thinking of taking a page from Joe Sontag, where you're releasing an ash can, maybe an 12 page ash can, kind of a preview of the eventual 48 page or 52, probably a 52 page graphic novel we're going to put out. Is that something you'd advise? Or
the school is out. The school is out on whether or not that like actually helps. Joe has such an amazing book, so I feel like
definitely
he was going to succeed no matter what. The talent he has assembled, and everyone loves Joe, and he's done it so well. Joe's exactly one of those guys who got out there in the community, introduced himself. Let's just chat and have fun. And he did that a long time before any of us really knew that he had a book to sell. I mean, he did it perfectly. He built up a channel, everything. He's a great guy. Everyone loves Joe. And then he assembled this like dream team of talent and put it
Yeah.
all on this book that is exactly the sort of book that people love to back, and that's why he had this massive success. I'm not saying don't do the Ashcan thing. Do the Ashcan thing. I just don't have enough data to point either way whether or not it's a good idea. It's certainly like I feel it's kind of like a dry run, which can be it can be valuable for people to see. Now you've crowdfunded. I mean, I assume you crowdfunded. I don't know if you crowdfunded your film or whatever, but
Mhm.
you got investors and you put a film out. So that's a big plus. Here's a guy that actually can get things done. But even in the comics, yeah, if you can get people to come in and say, yeah, I'll grab your Ashcan, see what it's all about. It's a cheaper entry point, and
Mhm.
then you fulfill it, get it out there. Yeah, you can advertise that and say, hey, look, we got this thing out there, and you got it in your hands. Now let's move on to the main event. It can't hurt. It's just other whether or not like you think it's worth the time and everything like that. But I just don't have the information on all that.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where it feels like, and I've told people before, like, because I do have a mailing list, and like I said, everything comes from the film world, but I feel like
Mm-hmm.
not doing a crowdfunding at least every year, my audience is getting cold. So I need to do
Yep.
something.
Yep.
And it's really doing the process of the film was really amazing how much people want to support you. How much, being an artist a lot of times can be lonely and depressing, but when I had the movie in the can. I needed extra money for finishing funds. I didn't want to do another crowdfunding. What I did was a private viewing and invited people like $20 a pop, come see the movie in its present state, wasn't in its final state, and had to do two showings. And what was interesting, once people saw the vision and once people they were so excited and so giving. I mean, not only that, not only the $20 a pop, people were donating money, they were writing checks. People sent me checks in the mail. They didn't have their checkbook with them. And it was just like the influx of love and support once people had something they could see, something tangible. And I feel like the more often you do crowdfunding, once a year, once every 18 months, keep your audience invested in you as an artist, has a lot of value. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I see that every time someone who's put out multiple crowd funds does a new one. They're playing on a whole different they're just playing a different ball game. They're on a whole different level. It's something that I'm working towards, but starting from nothing, these things take a long time to build up. That's why I'm hiring other guys to help me. So my plan going forward is I'll make my own books. They take a little longer to make. In the meantime, while you guys are waiting, I'll put out more Lucent related smaller books at a cheaper price in the middle between the crowd funds. So there's always something on the horizon. You don't have to wait, 2 years between each of the things. I couldn't agree with you more on that.
So tell me a little bit about your channel, and give it a quick shout out.
Yeah, my channel it's my name, Michael Bancroft. I started it just sort of following in the footsteps of the guys who came before me. Your boy Zach, Ethan, John Malin, guys like that. I started streaming when I crowdfunded the book so that I could, try and sell it, and and just never stopped. Have been doing it now for I think over 2 years, and I love it. It's yeah, we talk comics, we talk crowdfunding. I do draw streams. I do like weird draw streams where I don't actually draw anything. It's like an ongoing joke. It's yeah, I started getting into the short videos again, talking about pop culture and stuff like that, all just in service of building that audience. And not only is it an audience for people who can come and back my book, but thankfully, just because of the kind of channel that we've built, it's an audience where people will come to back other crowd funds. So we've been able to launch a lot of books on the channel, which is they're my favorite things to do. we actually launched Joe Sontag's Reaper Destroyer, and it just went amazingly. It was like record breaking for my show. I think we got close to $20,000 raised within 40 minutes or so, and it was just an absolute high. I mean, the dream, right? So yeah, it's comic book channels are not the most popular things on YouTube, but the audiences are extremely loyal and extremely passionate, and they're extremely generous with their dollars as well. If you've got something to offer them, they are willing to support you. So it's like a perfect place for an independent artist to come and operate.
What are the lessons you've learned on this creative journey of yours? What are the
And this
advice you
creative
want to
journey,
pass down to the young and the foolish?
I would say everything is going to take you a lot longer than you think it is. It's so much more work than you think it is, but it's also at the same time, it is as like when you get it done, there's nothing better. When you get people giving you feedback on your story that they love, everything, all the hard work and the slog and the trials and tribulations you went through all become worth it. Just from hearing that one fan say, oh, I loved your book, I love that part, I love this, that, like, it makes it all worthwhile. So it is a massive hard slog, but it is worth it. And also remember, like, whenever, this is the internet, so you're going to get people hating on you, you're going to get people trying to tear you down. Anytime the more successful you get, the more people you're going to get trying to tear you down. Whatever their motivations are, just figure out a way to let that roll off your back, and remember that what you're doing is supposed to be fun and entertaining and rewarding and fulfilling, and you will have a good time. Just, you kind of get out of it what you put into it. And that's where I'm at. Like, I'm having a blast. I'm getting to meet new people such as yourself or every day. I'm loving it.
And where can people reach you at?
They can find me on Twitter at the LUCENT Comic. My YouTube channel it's my name, Michael Bancroft. They're the two main places that I hang out. But yeah, give me a follow on Twitter. And I interact on Twitter every day with people from all over.
You heard of people, follow him on Twitter. And I want to thank you, Michael, for taking your time. What time is it there in Melbourne?
It is 9:15 in the morning. So I'm about to actually go to work.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, Michael. And I appreciate the help and the advice. And let's stay in touch.
Thanks so much for inviting me on, Derrick.
And that's a wrap for today's show. I want to give a shout out once again to Michael Bancroft for joining us all the way from beautiful Melbourne, Australia. All of his links are in the description. Check them out and make sure you support him. Also, show your boy Derrick Fury some love by signing up today for the mailing list for my new graphic novel, The Gentleman's Guild. That's right, illustration by the world famous E. by Canales. You don't want to miss it. The link to that is also in the description. Sign up today. And don't forget to watch Lion Killer, my debut feature film. That's right, I made a movie. It's called Lion Killer. It stars Regina Ting-Chen, who's currently on season 4 of Stranger Things. You can watch it at Amazon Prime, Tubi TV, Freevee, the Roku channel, or you can pop on over to the YouTube channel called V Movies. And thanks for watching this episode of FURYCAST. Make sure you like this video, comment below, subscribe, and yes, smash the bell. I'll be back next week. Until then, peace.